considering at this present moment, we're in the height of the COVID-19 coronavirus situation.
Yes.
And, you've been through that here, living in Beijing for the past couple months. So tell us what that was like.
So I'd been here during SARS, or I was here during SARS, so it wasn't a complete unknown to me. And so when it came out, I'd been through a somewhat similar situation in the past, so it wasn't a complete surprise. So I mean, there's two levels, right? There's like, how do you deal with it on the personal level, and then how do you deal with it on a business level? I'd say one thing that cuts across both is don't panic, just don't panic. It's going to be a thing, and it's going to be a while. There will be a world on the other side. I think a lot of people look at these things and they just say, oh, I want it to, when's it going to be back to normal? But it might not. There might be a new normal, that comes after that. So for us, the Chinese government pretty quickly enacted some fairly serious quarantine measers. And remember, Beijing is, I don't know how far away I am from Wuhan, 1,000 miles maybe. But even here in Beijing, it very strict when, okay, restaurants, public gatherings, everything stops, temperature checks. And so our office was shut, as were all offices. And our office is technically open now, but we're the only ones there in the building. So we continued to kind of work from home for these last weeks. But, for the first week, first couple of weeks, it's quite a shock. And it's quite isolating. There was a lot of rumors and things floating around, and I was getting a lot of concerned messages from friends in the US wondering if I was being evacuated. And you have to explain that, like, well, no, they're evacuating people from this hot zone in Wuhan, but I'm, quite okay, 1,000 miles away. From a business side, though, what we did is we did a couple things. So as I mentioned earlier, we're in some ways in the events business. And so there's a big one that was set for the first week of April, which has been canceled. So that took a good chunk out of our annual revenue for that. And we saw that coming, as well as a few other things. So the first thing that we did is we froze all the management bonuses, shareholder dividends, anything like that didn't need to go out immediately. That stops. Guarantee to all of the staff that if they need any medical treatment or if something happens, that will not be taken as part of their annual leave or annual sick leave or any of that, and that we're all kind of like in this together because we're really going to also need them when we come out the other side.
Right.
And this is the time to really keep your staff. And then we cut so we didn't cut anyone's compensation, but we did cut costs where we could. And then now and there's not much you can do but actually wait for a month, which is really hard. I think a lot of us aren't used to doing that. We're used to seeing a situation and trying to solve it immediately and then moving on. But this is one where for us it was wait. And then now, as we're on the other side of the hill and our business is starting to pick up again and people are looking at, well, what are the new ways that are emerging? What are the new business practices? How can we be on the right side of that and helping to facilitate those? Because our business on the event side is bringing people together.
Right.
So they're not going to be brought together in a physical sense, at least for the next few months. What are the other things you can do in that space to support those transactions? So those are the things that we're working on now.
You mean leveraging things like virtual events and more online forums, things of that nature?
Exactly. And so, and I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to see that, like, a lot of the I mean, the technology, as we're experiencing right now between you and me, exists for a lot of interactions that are offline. But when you're in the business as we are of creating a market where people would normally physically come together, and I mean, people don't realize this, but TV shows sales do happen at a market as well.
Right.
But if those markets are being postponed, but the business still has to happen, how do you position yourself in a way to help facilitate those transactions? So that's how we're adjusting to it.
And do you feel like so you mentioned the new normal, is it going to be a constant adjustment, or do you feel like you'll be kind of locked into a new normal in a few months' time? Any visibility there?
I think the new normal is already starting to emerge here, which is, and I don't think this is the normal forever, but I think maybe for the next few months. So social distancing. So now when I go to the grocery store here, they have marks outside where everyone's 1 meter apart. And they let a certain number of people in at a time, and you go in and everything else is like normal, but it's more about, what are the measures that you put in place to slow the spread so that hospitals have time to, to deal with the influx of patients that's happening. And in Beijing's kind of on the other side of that now. I don't think there haven't been any new cases for a few days now. And, when you go to the restaurants, which they've reopened, but they're not seating groups of more than 3 now. And if anyone who's watching this has been to China, you know how weird that is. Like in at a restaurant in China, but that's what they're doing. And those are considered like kind of the short to medium term things that you need to do that are nothing will completely protect you from getting this thing if it's out there and spreading in the community. But what are the things you can do to slow it down while you deal with it? And I know this is like not great comfort to people who have underlying conditions and are very worried, but it's the COVID-19's not a thing that I'd want to get or I'd want anyone to get, but it's not Ebola. It's not a civilization-ending virus at this point.
Right.
But, you have to make adjustments, and that's kind of where we're at here, where we're on the other side of what kind of becomes the new social normal. Right. But Chinese people have never been really huggy or kissy anyway. Right. So you didn't have to do that. But there is kind of they have a closer sense of personal distance in public that now has had to be, kind of conditioned differently.
Right. My experience in Asia has been, the personal space was always, very tight relative to personal space here in the States. So people have embraced more personal space.
Yeah. And, when you go outside now, and I go out, take long walks, everyone's wearing a mask. Mm. So you see, and that takes a little getting used to, to sort of see that. And then, and I think that'll still continue for a while here, another couple months or, another couple months maybe. But, I think where the business changes is that, you sort of in some ways have a natural experiment happening, which is where does your efficiency go if people do work from home? So a lot of companies have been reluctant, to allow people to do that because there's an assumption that, well, if they're not here, they're not working, they're, kind of doing other things. So how we've dealt with it is we have every morning, we have our all company meeting, we have a group video message. and we're assigning tasks for the day, and we're checking in every hour or two. And then, oddly enough, in some ways, this is actually, we're getting a lot more done, because a good part of what we do is, we get contracted to write these reports on, specific aspects of the media industry. And frankly speaking, they're a lot easier to write if you don't have distractions.
Right.
To focus. So our people that do that writing are actually churning it out a lot faster than they normally would.
Right.
But they're still connected. And then we meet physically once a week.
Okay. And is that at a public space or at the office?
We actually go to our office. Funnily enough, we're in a WeWorks with our own, I signed the contract for the WeWorks the day before all the stuff about the founder was announced, or
right.
or the IPO, when the IPO went.
Yeah, we're just tanked. Yeah.
Anyway, so we got a good deal.
Yeah.
But so we're there, but things are starting to come back. I mean, I won't say it's back to normal, but for many weeks there were very few cars on the street. I mean, I would do phone calls with clients in LA, and I would be outside and they would say, "What's that noise?" And it would take me a while to figure out that they meant birds.
Oh,
because
wow.
Normally all you hear is traffic.
Right.
And the traffic's gone and you realize it's birds.
Right.
So my experience, I don't know what value any of that would have to companies in Youngstown, which I think are will deal with it, in their own way.
Right.
But I thought it was important for us that, so I'm not the only expat at my company. And so for those of us that were here, I thought it was imperative that we do stay here and not abandon the staff, because that's kind of a failure of leadership 101. Oh, there's a danger. Okay, bye.
Yeah, right.
So we're all in this together, and that making sure they're all okay, and that that you do those checks. And so it's been about 2 months, and I feel we're kind of on the other side of it now, and I don't know if that will be the same time frame in the U.S. or not.
717 Credit Union. Business services designed to meet your daily needs. Commercial loans, business deposits, merchant and payroll services. 717 Credit Union. It's knowing you were treated right every time.